from the beginning of I Want to Be Like You, we asked each guest, who is your I Want to Be Like You? But we also ask almost every guest, can you manifest a dream guest for us? So we want to take you back in time to a couple weeks ago where we had a special guest, Matt Rodin, on.
Oh my God, a dream guest. Okay. I think you need to have Richie Rich on.
Oh, yeah.
I think you do, because I think this is a person that like is so a part of Broadway lore that I just think people don't know his story at all. Like, we see him everywhere.
Yeah.
He's at every event. He's been around for so long. He hasn't aged a day.
No, he really hasn't.
Okay.
He really hasn't. I've watched old videos and he really is not.
And I was watching him when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, I think I need to know, like, I want to know his, I mean, I know, but like, I think you need to have him on to like hear his whole story.
I would love to.
To me, he's just like a Broadway legend that is like niche enough that it feels like, and I think he would love to do it.
And then there was this. Okay, well, so recently we had Matt Rodin on, and he labeled you as a dream guest for us. So would you come on our podcast?
I'd love to.
Okay, great. Then we'll get it worked out.
Richard Ridge going on this podcast. Get ready. Watch out. I'm coming your way.
There we go. And now?
Hey everyone, it's Richard Ridge from BroadwayWorld, and this is I Want to Be Like You.
Richard Ridge is hosting the show now. We're so excited to have Richard Ridge on. I've been a big fan of Richard's for a long time. You know him as the face of BroadwayWorld. He's interviewed all of your favorite Broadway celebrities. We're so lucky to have him here, and he's our first dream guest.
Guest.
Let's talk a little bit about Richard Ridge. Richard Ridge is a born, bred theater kid, Broadway aficionado. And you see him on all the red carpets. You see him on all the press lines. He has become the face of BroadwayWorld and also the face of Broadway in certain respects because he's around all Broadway shows. It has been such a dream to have him on and a pleasure to have him on. He is the kindest, the sweetest, and he takes after Chita Rivera and everything he's learned from Chita Rivera. We get to talking about his time with Chita Rivera, his time with Fred Ebb, talking to Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke and all of the amazing people that he's had the opportunity to interview. And now I have the opportunity to interview him, our dream guest. I mean, who could ask for anything more? We were so lucky to talk with him. Our first dream guest from BroadwayWorld. Today, I Want to Be Like Richard Ridge. I want to be like you. 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 Welcome to another episode of I Want to Be Like You with Elbi Cespedes. Today, I want to be like Richard Ridge.
Thanks for having me
Thank
today.
you for doing this. So this is really special. Every episode, we do a manifestation where we ask the guests who we have on to manifest a dream guest for us. Now, a couple of weeks ago, and actually the episode came out today, Matt Rodin manifested you. And you are our first dream guest on the show ever. So this is especially special.
Oh, I like that. The first dream guest.
You're our first dream guest. So thank you, like times 10 for doing this. And Matt will be excited about it as well.
Totally, yeah.
So we start the podcast with the same question every time. And it is, who was your I Want to Be Like You when you were a kid?
That's a really great question because I grew up, so two of my first movies that I saw was Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. So I wanted to be Dick Van Dyke right away. After seeing Mary Poppins, I was 4 years old. My parents took us to the movie theater, and I was like, I want to be a song and dance man like him.
Yeah.
And then it was The Wizard of Oz, and I'm like, oh, I want to be Ray Bolger.
Yeah.
I want to be,
who
the
he wanted to be
Scarecrow.
like. Yeah.
And then I used to watch The Munsters. With Fred Gwynne and Yvonne DiCarlo's Lily Munster. And I have pointed ears. I don't know if you can see them. My ears come to a little point. So I was like, I want to be Eddie Munster. So those are like my three early ones growing up. But Dick Van Dyke was probably one of my biggest.
Dick Van Dyke was he's still one of my biggest.
Still, look.
99.
He works out and like dances every day and works out. And he's he's almost 100.
It was just they just put out an article yesterday that was like, oh, Dick Van Dyke is Dick Van Dyke is 2 months away or 3 months away from being 100, December 13th. And he said this thing. He was like, wouldn't it be funny if I passed away before 100? And everyone's like, no. And then look at that. Julie Andrews, too, just turned 90.
Like I said, she was my idol growing up. Female idol. It was like Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke.
Did you ever get to meet either one of them?
Yes.
You get to meet both of them?
Yes, I got to meet both of them.
Oh my God.
So Julie Andrews was a big deal for me. So when Julie had directed The Boyfriend, which she made her Broadway debut on Broadway. So she directed it years ago at Bay Street, which is a theater company in East Hampton.
Yes.
That's run by her daughter and her husband. So they were like, oh, would you like to interview Julie in between a rehearsal? And I was talking about a fanboy moment because I was like, no, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. But I was like, that was the best for me, was sitting with, your idol growing up. I interviewed her numerous times since then, but sitting on a one-on-one for 25 minutes of just talking about, oh my gosh, I'm sitting with, Mary Poppins, Maria Von Trapp, Eliza Doolittle, all the stuff we grew up with.
Unbelievable. And Dick Van Dyke as well.
Oh, Dick Van Dyke. I met Dick Van Dyke too. And the interesting thing is, so I met the gentleman who redesigned the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car, which travels the country. To all of these things. Yeah, so I got to sit in the car.
Oh my gosh.
But so Chita Rivera was my dearest. So if you were going to ask me who is my greatest idol of all time, it's Chita Rivera, hands down.
Right, of course.
I fell in love with her at my library when I took out the cast album of West Side Story. And I'm sitting at home and I'm listening to Tony, Larry Kurtzing, Maria, and all this stuff. And then I hear a boy like that who'll kill your brother. And I was like, who is that? And I'm like, oh, it's Chita Rivera.
Right.
So I met her at 17 years old when I first came. 17 and a half, I came to the city to start my career.
Right.
I met her, and she was like second family to me. So she was like a second mom to me. So
I was going to ask you, so in what capacity did you meet Dick Van Dyke?
So Dick Van Dyke. So when Chita was doing her show, The Dancer's Life on Broadway, Dick came in for a little run with her to recreate some numbers from Bye Bye Birdie.
No way.
And I got to talk to them at the theater. Well, I knew Chita forever, but I was like, she's like, Richie, close your mouth. I'm like, it's Dick Van Dyke. You know what I mean? You have those moments. She's like, close your mouth.
Yeah.
But I was like, but to meet him and talk to him for like 20 minutes was like,
oh my gosh.
That's what I love what I do, because I've gotten to meet my childhood idols and everything else as a journalist.
Right. That's special.
And the interesting thing is I've been asked to review, and it was something I never wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was like, I know too many people connected to these shows, and I like to celebrate.
Right. It's a very different thing.
It's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, when we were at the flea market, which is where we met you, and we asked you to come on the show live.
And I was like, I'm coming. I have to come now.
And he's here.
Yeah.
We asked, you mentioned about meeting Chita when you were 17. In what capacity did you meet Chita that young?
Okay, so I grew up on Long Island.
Oh, okay.
And there was a huge dinner theater called North Stage.
Okay.
And North Stage was the size of the Winter Garden Theater. It was the Old Cove Theater in Glen Cove. It was stunning beyond belief. It literally, the theater, it had a mezzanine, a balcony, everything. But they redesigned the theater. They put all these designer tables on levels, and all Broadway shows came in there. I mean, everybody under the sun, from like...
Into a dinner theater?
Into this huge dinner theater. But these are huge productions or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And I got to know Julie Newmar, who of course was a Catwoman. Of course, she's in Little Abner. So she had done Damn Yankees. They had done Funny Girl, and all these stars came. Dolores Gray did Gypsy, who had replaced Angela Lansbury in London in the revival. But of course, she was a big MGM star. But Cabaret was out there at the time. I was like 17 and a half, and I was working there, and a musical director said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I said, "Well, I want to, start a career in New York." So he said, I was getting ready to start my first year of college, and he's like, I can get you a job in New York. Do you have a place to stay? And I'm like, yeah, my friend had moved in there. So he said, I will get you a job. Why don't you start your career? Because I grew up on watching Marlo Thomas on That Girl. And she played Anne Marie. She was a girl from, Brewster, New York, who came to New York. And, she got theater jobs, and she worked. And she met like Ethel Merman, all this stuff in the show. And I was like, I want a career like Anne Marie or Marlo Thomas. I'll come to New York. I'll get a job at a restaurant. I'll audition for stuff.
Wow.
So, and I said, fine. So I went home to my parents, and I remember this. I had a 5-hour meeting with my parents in their bedroom. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to move to New York City. And they said, you're not even 18 yet. And like, we were brought up in like the Bronx and Queens. We gave you the suburbs. I'm like, I grew up here, but I want to go to New York. I want to, see if I can work on Broadway or get involved in the theater. And I finally had a 5-hour meeting. And I said, I'm taking my $500 out of the bank. I'm going to move in with my friend Jeff, who had an apartment downtown. And I said, I want to start a career.
Wow.
And that's, but this was like the early 1978.
Okay.
And I don't know, I still think it was more of a bohemian time.
Sure.
Where things were a little more affordable. My first apartment was $375 on the Upper West Side.
Wow.
So I lived on 74th between River and West End.
Oh my God.
It was a crappy building.
Sure.
But it had an elevator.
Yeah.
The building was falling apart. But, Riverside Park was right there, and I paid $375. I worked. I made money.
Yeah.
You could
Where
still.
did you work?
I worked at Ted Hook's Backstage. That was a job I got. So for those of you who don't know, Ted Hook's Backstage, it's now a stripper joint. So it's next to Moulin Rouge. That used to be the
one
used to be the Martin
in
Beck
between
Theater.
Broadway Dance
Now
Center.
it's the Al Hirschfeld. So yes. So it's, I don't know what it was called, Flashdance or
Something like
whatever
that. It's
these
the
things.
one right next to it, between
Right next door.
Broadway Dance Center
Yes,
and...
but it was a very famous theatrical restaurant. But before that, in the 60s, it was called the American Kitchen. And when Chita Rivera was doing Bye Bye Birdie, next door at the Martin Beck, they used to dine in between her and Dick Gaudier and Susan Watson would all dine there. So Ted opened the restaurant at the end of 1975, Ted Hook's Backstage, and Chita was just starting Chicago on Broadway. And she was like, oh my gosh, you know what? I hear there's a new restaurant that opened next to the Martin Beck. It's called Ted Hook's Backstage. Let's go. So she fell in love with Ted. Now, the best thing about, their Sardi's, which is unbelievable, one of the best theatrical restaurants, and Joe Allen. But Backstage was really special because it had the best lighting. It was gorgeous. There were banquettes and lighting. There was a baby grand piano. There was a piano bar. And all the Broadway stars came in. And there were these Ziegfeld lamps on the table. It was Ziegfeld staircase, and the lampshades changed, and it would have the name of the star. So when you went to your table, your name would be on the lampshade.
Oh, that's cool.
And when I eventually started working there, I was in charge of all the lampshades. And so Ted would be like, oh my God, Ann Miller and Ethel Merman are coming in. Get the lampshades out, So they were all alphabetized. So I got to know so many stars there. But anyway, going back to that, how did we get started on this?
I guess that's starting Chita.
So I met Chita. So Chita would come in all the time, and then her sister Lola became the manager of there. But I started taking care of Chita and her family. And she always said to me the day she met, she goes, my God, you have this incredible energy and you have this incredible light that, surrounds you. And she's my favorite person. And right before she passed away, one of the last things Chita did was co-host our big BroadwayWorld anniversary. That was at Sony Hall.
Yes.
And we're sitting backstage, and she goes, I want to tell you something. She goes, because the show was going on, people, it was an incredible evening. And she goes, I just watch you work, just talk to people. And she goes, I remember telling you when you were not even 18 that you had this light because you've never lost your light. Oh, wow. And I've been doing this business for a really long time because now I'm 65. I will go on air telling you that I'm now 65 years old. I'll deny it for anybody else.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
But I always say, age is a number.
Yeah.
And I always say, stay young at heart or whatever, find the passion of what you want to do in life. And my glass has always been half full. But I literally met her at 17 and a half. I took care of her family. I got to know her. I went through so many highlights with her career and when she had her accident and everything else, but just everything.
Wow. That's incredible.
So I decided to come to New York, and I was just like, I'd never really worked in a restaurant. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to become a waiter.
Yeah.
I started out doing like matinee days, which is Wednesday and Saturday. When you start in a restaurant, they give you like the day shifts or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember it was at a Saturday, and I remember ordering 4 eggs Benedict for table 9, and I must have put the dupe in twice. So all of a sudden, I had served the table, and I was like, they were like, Richard, pick up these 4 eggs Benedict for table 9. And I'm like, oh my God. So I literally walked to the kitchen, I picked them up, and I'm walking through the dining room, and I threw them in the bus pan, like in the side station. And I was like, oh my God, did anybody see me do this? Am I going to be fired? But of course, I was like, oh my God. I got up, but I was like,
because it was more than you had anticipated yourself.
Yeah, it was far more. I didn't know what to do with them.
Right.
But I learned, I always say people learn by doing. And this is why I'm giving you this thing. I never had worked in a restaurant, but I remember back then, I could have a table of 8. I could ask, what would you like to drink tonight? They would just give me their whole order. I could never do that now. If you would tell me, I want a white wine, I want a red wine, I want a screwdriver, I want a vodka cranberry, I'd go to the bar and say, was that a vodka cranberry? But I was really good then. I pat myself on the back.
Oh my gosh. Really good. So how long were you working there? And
so I worked for Ted, the restaurant. I think I worked for 5 years, 6 years, whatever. But every night there were celebrities. There was called Star Alley there. So any given night, You would have Lena Horne, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Liza Minnelli, Chita Rivera. So I remember going to work one day. So I go to work, and we used to have to come in at 3:30. And you do a little side, you get dressed, you do your side station, like fill your salt and peppers up and all this stuff. So I get there at 3:30, and the manager, he said, "Hey, Richie, how are you?" He said, "There's a woman sitting on table 22. I told her she could only stay an hour because we're totally packed for pre-theater." I said, "Okay." So I walk through the room, and I see this woman sitting there, and my mouth opens up, and I go back, and I said, "Bruce, that's Cher." Because come back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean played at the Martin Beck next door, and she was in rehearsal. So she's sitting there having a salad and reading her script. I said, "She's not leaving." That's when I first met Cher.
Oh my God.
So, like Jimmy Dean, so the cast would come back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Cher, the late great Sandy Dennis, Karen Black, Kathy Bates.
Oh my goodness.
So I used to take care of them all the time. Wow. And I remember one night, so, of course, Karen Black, of course, from Hollywood, So she's in New York, and she's all curled up on the banquette, and she goes, "Richard, do you have any brown rice?" So I'm like, "Let me go check." So I go in the back room, in the kitchen, I'm like, "We didn't have brown rice in 1980. Brown rice. So I was like, I said to the chef, "What should we do?" I said, "You know what? Drop a whole thing of rice in the au jus gravy, and we'll take it out. It'll turn color, and then you'll reheat it in water." What are you going to do?
You made brown rice.
I made brown rice and whatever for Karen Black. But I used to take care of them all the time. And this is when Sandy Dennis was dating Eric Roberts. So I used to take care of all these people. So I'm a big Cher fan. So I had seen Cher at all her concerts or whatever. Wow. So when the Cher show opened on Broadway, of course, I was on the carpet.
Yeah.
And it was pandemonium time. I mean, there was like 45 crews. Oh, wow. I mean, it was crazy time. There was six.
It that for that show or just
for the Cher show?
Yeah, but
and she was coming opening night.
Okay, that's why. Yeah.
So my friend Stephanie J. Block and Tia Wicks and Michaela Diamond were playing the Chers. But I mean, this carpet was so huge because Cher was coming, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll get to talk to her on open night, maybe I won't. So I see her arrive, pandemonium, the photographers are going crazy, and then all these high-end TV people are all prepped to do their thing or whatever. So she's with her publicist and starts to do some interviews. She catches my eye. She walks by 15 crews and comes over to me.
Oh, wow.
So she had that recognition.
Yeah.
I didn't have the time to tell her, but she knew that I knew her. She said, "It's so great to see you again."
Wow.
And I was like, so I've always told people when you're doing anything, always try to find a connection. Mm-hmm. Like when you're sitting with interviewing someone, do you have something in common with them? Did you know someone they worked with?
Right.
Because when you do these movie junkets, I do the movie junkets for like the Broadway shows that become movies.
Right.
And of course you only get them for like 4 minutes.
Yep.
You get a 4-minute window, and of course it's right back and forth. And the directors, they bring you in the room. "Hi, please sit down. You have 4 minutes. Please state your name. Whatever. And you have, and we'll count you down or whatever." But I like to go into these, and I like to say most of these people I've known because I've been in this business for a long time, as you know. I literally started. I'll tell you how I got started with that. But I've been doing this for like 35 years. I've been covering theater. I've been a theater journalist for 35 years.
Right.
So I've watched a lot of these people start in the chorus or as understudies and work their way up.
Right.
So I think I have I've known these people. It's not just a soundbite for me. Mm-hmm. It's a personal history with them.
Yeah.
So I remember doing the press junket for the movie of 9.
Okay.
And I was given Judi Dench. And I was obsessed with Judi Dench.
Of course.
And of course, my 4 minutes. You sit outside of these chairs. "Richard, you're going in next," and you get in there. They're pouting her down or whatever. And I said, "Before we start, Miss Dench, I want to tell you that Fred Ebb was a really dear friend of mine." Now, of course, Fred Ebb and John Kander have written everything.
Of course.
And of course, Judi Dench starred as Sally Bowles in London.
Oh.
In the London production.
I don't think I knew that.
Oh yeah, in Cabaret. You get the CD. It's fabulous. The CD if you can find the vinyl. It's really great. And Fred used to have me over to watch 8mm clips of Judi Dench because Fred was a dear friend. She sat there. She's like, "I can't believe you knew Fred." She goes, "I can't believe what you're telling me." I said, "Just so you know, watching those meant the world to me." So I had a connection with her. So before they're trying to circle on the floor. We hadn't even started yet. But I'm like, I always say try to have a connection with someone because then you'll get something different.
And how important it is to remember, because this is what I'm realizing having done this, is like remembering how human these people are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times, like we've had casting directors on. And as an actor, I've been across the table from these casting directors for years at this point. And there are times where they're sitting in this chair and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, you're just a human being.
See? Never when I'm in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
But here you are.
And it's a bizarre. It feels a little bizarre in a way. You're sitting there. You're meeting Julie Andrews, Judi Dench. I mean, like you kind of forget that the human connection is the most crucial part of all of it. Right?
That's what I like to find, and that's what I've done through my entire career.
Right.
I like to have a conversation with people, and I like to find the human interest.
Right.
Anybody can give you a soundbite.
Of course.
You know, and people, listen, there's an art to that too. And when you have someone for a short amount of time, but talking to people that I've known or going to these things, I like to make a human connection.
It's important. Yeah.
So even if you only have 4 minutes, you've walked out of there knowing, my gosh, I've had an incredible day. You know, because you've idolized these people, but you're also there. Like I said, I'm still a fan.
Yeah,
that's
of
why I
course.
don't review. I love shows.
Right.
How people do these shows 8 times a week baffles me.
Yeah.
The prep work you have to do.
Right.
And people have I got to understand. You know, the vintage stars used to tell me that they used to wake up every day and be like, oh, how do I feel today? I have a matinee and an evening. I've got to prepare myself to that I know I have to go to the theater.
Right. Right.
What's interesting is like a show will last, especially these days, like a year, let's say, and it's a great run, then it closes, and you're like, all right, well, that was only a year. That was 8 shows a week for a year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah.
You know, the other great thing when I've talked to stars before too, you know, you look at someone's bio and you'd be like, oh my God. You know, that's why I like to have a conversation. I like to do a lot of my SAG-AFTRA foundations and my big sit-downs at BroadwayWorld, because you look at someone's bio and you're like, oh my God, they've done 15 incredible things. But one star told me one day, Andrew Reynolds told me, he said, Richie, no one sees the in-between. I've had to wait in between, movie 1 or show 1. I had no idea I was going to work for 3 years until the next one came along.
Or the classic, where have you been? And it's like, well, this is where I've been,
but
man.
seriously, and I always listen to that now, that no one sees the in-between.
Right.
So I try to humanize everybody. You know, all these fans think that, you know, God or someone's tapped them on the shoulder and said, this one's a star, that one's a star. But no, they're just as human and going through the same things.
Right.
You know.
And trying to find the next job.
And trying to find the next job. And I'm sure, you know, I forget what star said it, but they were like, it's not just getting a career, it's sustaining a career.
Right.
Because you can get a hit series that runs for 5 years, and, you know, but then you've got this whole entire team. You've got publicists and managers and agents and, you know, voice coaches, and all your money disappears or whatever. You bought a house and you bought your mother a car or whatever, and then your series ends, and you're like, wait a minute. And then you get pigeonholed.
The wells run dry.
No, but you know what I mean. That's got to be a scary.
All the time.
And you know, we live in a very disposable society now.
Yeah.
With, you know, people don't appreciate a lot of artists anymore. Like, oh my God, I love that person, but I hate them now. Or, you know, they're showing
It's
off.
true.
Or now I'm on to someone else. Or, I don't know. It's crazy.
It's true. It's true. It's a very quick turnaround, and if you're not in the zeitgeist all the time, you're out.
But see, I love all the stars. I love the same stars I loved when I was 4 years old.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm really loyal. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, you know, and I'm like, you know, it's crazy now, but everything's disposable.
What was, because I have to dial it back for one moment about Fred Ebb, because you mentioned Fred Ebb. How did you meet Fred? How did you become friends with Fred Ebb? It's funny a lot, and I imagine we were just talking about it, right? It's like I've met Lin-Manuel Miranda a bunch of times, right? I see him at the Drama Bookshop. He's very around the community, all of these things. But when I hear that someone, we were just listening to someone say, like, not Elvis. It was we have a teacher who was like, I met Stephen Sondheim at the Institute, and he was alive for the majority of my life. I never met him, but the idea of you met Stephen Sondheim, and it's funny because Stephen Sondheim, in a similar way to Lin-Manuel Miranda, was around the community all the time. Yeah. A lot of people met him. A lot of people had personal experiences with him, and he gave himself access to that. But now that he's passed, he's kind of become even more of a legend than he already was. Yeah. Fred Ebb, I feel like, falls into the same thing. I don't think I was alive very much at the same time as Fred Ebb. So the notion of you getting the chance to spend time with Fred Ebb feels so, aggrandized to me. So talk to me about Fred Ebb.
Okay, so growing up, John Kander and Fred Ebb, along with Jerry Herman and Cy Coleman, but there was something about Kander and Ebb. Yeah. Because Cabaret was one of my first, because of course the movie I saw first, and then so every Christmas I would ask my favorite aunts and uncles to buy me 5 original cast albums or soundtracks. And I give each person a different list. And I said, you don't have to buy 5, but this is your list. Yeah, yeah. You know, you can buy as many or as few as you want. That's all I wanted for the holidays. For Christmas, all I wanted was original cast albums. Yeah. or soundtracks. And the year of that, the year the movie of Cabaret came out, I was totally blown away.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the show yet at that point. So that Christmas, one of my aunts gave me the movie soundtrack with Liza and Joel Grey and all of them. And another aunt gave me the cast album, which is the yellow album with the Tom Morrow drawing on it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So, at Christmas time, after I opened all my albums, all my cousins would come down to the basement and it was like cast album time. So I'd play this stuff. So I fell in love. I just fell in love with, I think Fred Ebb is to me, the finest lyricist writer, I think. And I love what they do, John Kander, Fred Ebb, because all their stuff is very dark. A lot of their stories have been very dark, but yet very, very successful.
Right.
I mean, Cabaret is just as relevant, I think, more today with everything we're going through in our country and the world. Cabaret is just as relevant today as it was when they wrote this back in the late 60s.
For sure.
Kiss of a Spider Woman, and Chicago. So Chicago was another one for me. So I'm very territorial during certain seasons. So the year of On the 20th Century, and Liza Minnelli was doing the act, Kander and Ebb. So 20th Century was at the St. James, and right across the street was Liza Minnelli in the act, Kander and Ebb. So I was like, okay, I really enjoyed On the 20th Century, but I loved the act. So I would live at the Majestic Theater. So I don't know if it's OCD or whatever. I was like, what do you want to do? Let's go back and see the act. I want to see the act again. Let's go see the act. I was always that way. But getting to know Fred.
Yeah.
So I met them all at Backstage because Chita would come in with them and everything else. And so the rink was happening. So at that point, Ted's had closed and I had moved to Curtain Up, which was a fabulous other theatrical restaurant in Manhattan Plaza. It was in the 9th Avenue building. It was Bob Nahas, incredible man too. Ted Hook and Bob Nahas were two of the most amazing theatrical restaurateurs I have ever known in my entire life. So during the rink, Chita and Liza lived at Curtain Up. I took care of them all the time. And Fred would come in, the whole cast would come in. So I really got to know Fred and John. I met them all at Backstage too. But then when I became a journalist with Broadway Beat, Fred was like, yeah, I'd love to sit with you. So I got to do a 2-hour in-depth with him. But I used to just go out with him and have lunch with him and he'd invite me over and everything else. So, but to get to know your idols on a personal level. But he was just the greatest man in the world. I just think if you go back and listen to brilliant lyricist writer.
Yeah, and one of my favorite Fred Ebb videos is that New York, New York. I mean, like that is it's so rich. You see so much of what he's giving. I mean, like it just feels so powerful and he's singing the song. I mean, he's singing his own song and you feel every single lyric, And
so that's from the Lyrics and Lyricists series they used to do with the Y years ago. So they would take composers and lyricists and they would sing their own songs at an evening. So the video you're seeing was from the Y series of Lyrics and Lyricists.
Funny.
And there's a whole set of albums you can buy. The albums, I don't think it was ever put on CDs, but they're really fabulous. And John Kander played the piano.
Yes.
And Fred Ebb sang all the songs.
So cool.
And Fred Ebb is Liza Minnelli and Liza Minnelli is Fred Ebb. Just so you know that. I mean, because if you look at Liza, Freddie taught her a lot, and the same thing with Chita. It was very interesting. Fred Ebb was I say those are his two favorite ladies.
Yeah,
Liza and Chita were his two favorites. But he created a persona for Liza. He gave her all of that.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing is, if you watch Liza Minnelli, I'm obsessed with Liza. Of
course.
Just so you know. So if you go back and watch her concerts, she would always open with a huge number that would blow the roof off the place.
Yeah.
Then her second number was always quiet with her hands behind her back. And it was Fred who told her to put her hands behind her back to sort of bring it down. Because she was a nervous ball of energy too. But so if you look at all of her concerts, you'll always see a big, fabulous opening number. Second number is always a ballad, and it always starts with her hands behind her back.
Wow.
And that was a Fredism.
Wow.
And Fred wrote all the dialogue, put all of her nightclub acts together, and Cheetah's.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so when Chita was going to do Chicago, Bob Fosse had a heart attack.
Right.
And it shut the show down. Now, Chita had moved back from California, and she's like, oh my God, I have no work. It was almost a year. So Fred and Ron Field said, we're going to put a nightclub act together for you. And she said, oh my God, I don't know if I want to do a nightclub act. I did them years ago, but I'm not really sure, whatever.
Yeah.
And they put together Chita Plus 3 and Chita Plus 2, which opened at the grand finale, which is no longer there. It was a fabulous nightclub. You couldn't beg, borrow, steal a seat. It kept getting extended and extended, and then it came to there was the Empire Room at the Waldorf Astoria. So if you ever go in the Waldorf, go in the lobby, and there's two where the weddings take place.
Okay.
At these two rooms, the East Room, I think, was the Empire Room.
Okay.
It was a huge nightclub. I think it held hundreds and hundreds of people. It might have even held 1,000.
Wow.
Shirley Bassey, Liza Minnelli, everybody played there.
Oh my
Peggy
gosh.
Lee. And Chita was it. They all did, but but Freddie, and he'd write all their acceptance speeches and everything else, and write all the dialogue they did in their shows.
Wow, that's crazy. So it's funny you mentioned that because so one of my dearest, we mention her all the time, and she's worth mentioning. Michelle Polk, she's one of my dearest. I call her my theater godmother. She's the godmother of our podcast as well.
I love Michelle Polk.
How
and
could
her
you not?
husband, but she
John
is
Dossett,
a goddess.
She is, and she was our first ever guest, and she was a mentor. She's a mentor and professor of mine when I was at Wagner College.
Yeah.
And she told us the story when she was doing cabaret about the same thing. It's funny you mentioned it because I was going to say it. But Fred Ebb told her about keeping that arms behind the back as almost as a reserve. You know what I mean? Like there's a groundedness that comes with it. And so it's funny that you mentioned that because I'm like, of course I've seen that, and that was a Fred Ebb thing of like keeping the arms behind the back. It's just
One of my favorite Fräulein Schneiders.
Yeah,
was Michelle Polk.
Yeah, of course.
I just think she's so fabulous at what she does. She's just really, really brilliant.
She's wonderful. And gosh, I love seeing her in Just in Time. It makes me so happy. We've seen it twice already.
And she wasn't going to do it.
I know.
I love it. I think Jonathan talked her into doing it.
Yeah.
And she's so happy she's doing it.
I know. Yeah, she sure is. And she looks great and she's killing it on that stage. So it's good to see her. It's good to see her on that on the stage. We're going to have her back, I'm sure. Okay, let's talk about this. We always ask this question, and this feels even more of a poignant question for you. What was your first Broadway show?
Fiddler on the Roof, Harry Goss, and an unknown Bette Midler playing the daughter Zeidel. It was at the Majestic Theater. Now, I remember everything. So I have this thing. So I take 5 playbills from every show I go to. I will deny this to anybody. But of course, you're all listening around the world. But seriously, Fiddler was my first.
Yeah.
And because my parents used to go to the theater like twice a year or whatever.
Okay.
And they brought home a playbill. I was fascinated by this. But they had a fabulous record cabinet too that I fell in love with first. Because like I said, I fell in love with movies first.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh. I fell in love with The Sound of Music, but I saw this like white and gray cover. It said original Broadway cast, Mary Martin and The Sound of Music. And I'm like, this is not Julie Andrews.
Yeah.
And my father's like, no, we're going to buy that this week. It started as a stage show. I'm like, a stage show? So I was like, interesting. So, they brought their playbill home. Then they had the album to Fiddle on the Roof, and I was obsessed with this. And I was like, oh. So that was my first Broadway show. I think I was 10 years old. And my mother came in with my sister. They dropped me off at the Majestic. They went to Macy's. I sat in the first row of the mezzanine, dead center. I remember everything. I can tell you what the theater smelled like that day. Looking at the Boris Aronson sets, I can see the gels of the lighting. I remember everything about that day.
Wow.
And I remember where the playbills were kept at that last row, at that first seat behind. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's more of them here. And I think back then, I'm not sure if playbills were still, for a long time, it was a weekly magazine.
Oh.
But I think they would change the covers if a Golda left or whatever, they would change the cover. So I saw another cover with Tevye with a different look. I said, oh my God. So I took 5. But it's like, so every time I go, but now I give them to my editor and whatever else, or I give them to fans. So it's not like I just waste them.
Yeah,
but it's just something, it's one of those things.
It's funny because we collect them too. I have a huge box of playbills that's in my room that I'm like, I'm not sure what I'll ever do with this, but I'll probably show it to my kids one day. I'm like, you don't even realize what you're looking at.
Or you can always pass it on. Because I remember when I grew up in Glen Cove, my sister's best friend lived down the hill, and her grandfather, I forget, was a big wig, and he worked in New York, and he always took his clients to Broadway shows when they all had those expense accounts and everything else.
Sure.
And he saw all the Broadway shows, and he kept all the playbills in the basement. And when Maureen's father passed away, they were like, oh, do you think your brother Richard would like this playbill collection? And I took my brother's wagon down there, and I was like in heaven They were all pristine, and they were like all from the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I was like, oh my, I just, when kids play with like Legos or G.I. Joes, I'd be like, I'm playing with my Playbill collection. I didn't really care. And then my neighbors would come over too. I'm like, forget about that. Do you want to see Playbills?
Yeah, that's funny. So when did you decide that you were going to take this up as a career in terms of the journalism aspect of it?
So I started coming to New York as an actor. So I worked as an actor as a kid too. I worked a lot in Long Island and everything else. Yeah. And then I came to New York. You start a career, whatever, and you audition for stuff and everything else. But, I was getting to know all these stars at Backstage and everything else. Right. And I was like, I was really happy being a waiter then because it was more than that. It was getting to Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet singing at my birthday. Ted said, come in your day off. Wow. And he had my birthday, So every night Ted would announce the stars in the house. So around 10:30, 11 o'clock, he'd get to the baby grand piano and say, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, whatever. Rock Hudson is here tonight, and Elizabeth Taylor is here tonight, and, Liza's getting ready to open her new show, and Cheetah's back, and they'd all stand up, and they'd all clap or whatever else. And but it was I loved doing that. It's like I met everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
And so Liberace would come in. And I adored this man. So, so he'd come in and he came in and he'd sit on the banquette. And before we started, he said, sit down and said, what's going on with your career? How is your career going? You auditioning for stuff? What's happening? I tell him whatever. So I had this kind of it was like mentoring. Like, you listen to these people who'd be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So.
So were you auditioning at the time? And
I auditioned and did little stuff or whatever. And then I had a nightclub act that I did. Oh. And Bradshaw Smith was a very big videographer in New York who would videotape. This is like in the 80s and early on. He had high-end equipment. He would tape all the cabaret acts for all the big acts and all the big stars or whatever. And so when I was doing my act, my husband said, we're going to have this taped. So he went to the manager of the club, said, well, Bradshaw Smith does all of this. And then we all became really good friends. And he had a local cable show called Cabaret Beat because that was the genre he worked in.
Sure.
So like Rainbow and Stars and, and Sidney Meyer, who's a really dear friend who runs Don't Tell Mama, would be his journalist, would be his interviewer on the show. And then Brad was like, oh, I want to move into a different direction. I've done enough of this. You know everybody on Broadway. Would you want to become a journalist? I remember the Christmas party. He asked me this. I said, yeah. I said, do you want to go you know everybody? And I said, yeah, let's do this. And he's like, well, how do we get some of the stars? I'm like, I'll call them. Or I just dry called all the publicists way before New York won everything else. There were 2 local channels. Right. There was like 34 and 35, I think. One was the Dirty Channel that ran like Robin Bird. And then there was the other one. I think 35 was the dirty one and 34 was the regular one. So people get mixed up. So they put Broadway Beat on and be like, oh my God, there's a stripper. I'm like, oh, I'd be like, turn the channel. No, but there were 2 local channels. They were right next to each other on the dial.
Wrong one.
But I would literally dry call publicists.
Wow.
And I'm like, hi, I'm Richard Ridge. We have this cable show called Broadway Beat. We cover the theater in New York. We just celebrate, could we come to the theater? Could we come to a rehearsal? And then a friend would be like, oh my God. I was like, I love Julie Harris, one of the greatest actresses of all time. My friend said, oh, I know Julie Harris because I knew her assistant from Backstage. Here's her number. I thought the assistant would pick up the phone. He goes, no, this is Julie Harris. I said, this is Richard Ridge. I said, I know you're doing your show down at the Lucille Hotel. I said, we have this local cable show called Broadway Beat, and we celebrate the theater in New York, and I'd love to sit with you for a half hour to talk about the show and your career. Oh, let me get my book. So it was very easy early on. Or I'd have a publicist say to me, cable, what is that? What's video? Oh, let me go to my producer and I'll call you back. And like an hour later, I'd say, yeah, my producer wants to do this.
Wow.
So I started from the ground up. So everybody, thank you very much. No, I'm just kidding for all the kids. No, but we were the first. I loved it. So we did that for, I don't know, I must have done Broadway Beat for, I don't know, 20 years, whatever. So
really?
Brad had an apartment on 43rd between 8th and 9th.
Okay.
Big railroad
How
through.
Perfect.
And the wall between the living room, which became the studio. We had lights and everything set up like this, but really big or whatever. And then there was a big white wall leading into the back where he edited everything. We had all the stars sign the wall.
Oh, how
cool. We had everybody. I mean, we had Gwen Verdon, Chita Rivera, every major star under the sun who's ever done Broadway or movies who are in town to do something. We wish we could take in the wall with us.
Now, was the intent? This is what I'm realizing. Like, I actually talked about this with Matt too when he came on. Is like our intent with this podcast. At first, I was like, oh, like we'll have people on and we'll promote things, right? We'll say, oh, okay, well, Michelle's coming on. We'll talk about Just in Time, and who's coming on. We'll talk about. And then I started to realize, what I really enjoy about this is like having people like you on where we could just sit and have a conversation.
That's what you want.
Yeah. And so what was the intent going in? Was your intent to promote, or was it, or just kind of like, let's chat about your career, or both? Or
So early on, it was the intent to sell whatever show they were in.
Right.
And then I'd go back and delve into some of the other stuff they did, depending on, a lot of them back then were like, we could do 2-parters, which means if someone sat for an hour, we broke them into a half hour one week and then a half hour the other week. And we were able to sort of run clips then if we like gave credit to like Warner Video or whatever else. Then it became something totally different. They're like, whatever.
Right.
But we included clips. We always thanked people at the end or whatever.
Right.
But the intent was to do that. But then Robert Diamond, who's my boss at BroadwayWorld, who runs BroadwayWorld, had bought Broadway Beat to run at BroadwayWorld for content.
Okay.
So we were still on local cable, but then we moved to BroadwayWorld. And then what happened was Brad sort of wanted to step out of the business.
Okay.
There were other people coming in who, Brad would also tape a lot of the press reels.
Okay.
But then some of these bigger companies started to come in, of course, what they do, you know.
Yeah.
I'd always said to him, I said, don't talk to these people. They're just going to steal what you do.
Right.
So he got a little disillusioned, but he was such a triumpher of the business. And of course, of me, I wouldn't have a career without what he gave me.
Right.
He's in heaven now. But anyway, Ian McKellen was doing, I think it was a big show. Was it Hamlet or no, King Lear, who's doing out at BAM. It was like a 3-hour production. We couldn't turn your phone on.
Wow.
So my phone was off and I get out of there and all of a sudden my phone's beeping off and I call my husband. He's like, Bradshaw had a stroke. So he's like, go to the hospital. So it's what happened was Brad was editing our Porgy and Bess with Audrey McDonald and everything else.
Okay.
So, he passed away 2 days later. So, and the interesting thing was, Rob Diamond said, why don't you just stay at BroadwayWorld? I'll give you your own show.
I see.
So I was very lucky for the 25 years or 20 years I had with Brad. I stayed at BroadwayWorld and then I became sort of the face of BroadwayWorld, and Rob said, just do what you want to do here.
Wow.
But, because I didn't go to school for this. Like I said, I mean, I know a lot of people, school is wonderful for a lot of people.
Sure, yeah.
But I've spoken to a lot of, like my MGM stars. Ann Miller said, Richard, my alma mater was MGM. A lot of these people, a lot of people,
of course.
like, a lot of people, you learn by doing.
Yeah.
With whatever you do. It's like, you can go to school to be an actor, but, until you go to an audition or whatever else, you could be like, oh, I did all the roles in school. They're like, well, you're not really talented. No, but you know what I mean. It's like,
no, it's true.
It's a false
it's true.
positive.
Yeah.
When you think.
It's a nice foundation to have, but it's not for everyone. It doesn't mean that it's for everyone.
And there are natural people who just have a natural singing voice or can go into a room with a casting director or creative team and be like, oh, I'll read you. Or meeting people who write stuff and say, oh, yeah. Or I'll read that role for you. And they're like, my God, you're really good at this. Whatever.
Right.
Like Chita always said, stay in your lane. And this is something I try to tell everybody. I tell my journalist friends who are just starting on the carpets, because I've watched people come and go over the years.
Right.
Some people last a season and they all think they're the hottest thing under the sun.
Yep.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
But I'm like, then they're gone.
Yeah.
But I said, there's only one of you. We always idolize someone else, but that person already exists.
That's interesting.
And that's the key to what you do too. I mean, there are many podcasters, but there's no one like you.
Right.
Or your brother. And I always say, like Chita said, stay in your lane, be you.
Yeah.
Some people will buy you, some people won't.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Were you ever watching anyone that you, in terms of journalists, were you ever watching people that you were like, oh, I really like the way that they...
Oh, I was brought up on Merv Griffin.
Oh, okay.
Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas. Of course, Johnny Carson. But Merv Griffin had all the Broadway people on when he was in New York.
Yes.
And Merv would always have a conversation. How's the kids? How's the family? Oh, my God. And he'd look at the audience.
Right.
Like when I do live interviews with people, I like to embrace the audience of just saying, how many of you saw them in this movie? And they'll clap.
Yeah.
I like to, and Merv always did that. But but Merv made it a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so he was always my go-to.
Right. And I I've always been drawn to that idea. Is like, and that was a big intent with doing this too. Is like we're trying to formulate a conversation, not an interview. You know what I mean? So that because the interview can feel like in a box in a way.
Well, I always say know where you want to go.
Right.
But you may have A, B, C, D, and E, but you might have asked me A and I already answered C, then go back to B.
Right.
But through a conversation.
But this way, it's not, you know, in acting, it's the same thing of like, oh, you know, you rehearse a piece and then you bring it into the room. They're like, can you try it like this? And you're like, but I just, you know what I mean? So you have to kind of be malleable to be able to, you know, be flexible in the sense that like, okay, well, you know what? You just answered my 8th question. So now I need to, I'm not going to ask that now because we already talked about, you know, things like that.
I always say just sort of in your mind know what you want to accomplish, but then just let it all go.
Yeah.
Because we're listening to each other.
Right.
And taking off of that, say, oh, well, tell me about this one. Tell me about Fred. Tell me about whatever.
Right.
You know, it just...
And it's funny because and I should tell you, like, I've been watching you for years. I've been watching you, and I told Matt this too. Like, we would sit, I would sit, we didn't become, we were theater kids, but we didn't become into Broadway until like the last 10 years really. And then there came a point, 2016, 17, 18, 19, Broadway is maybe the hottest it's been in pop culture in a while. And you have Mean Girls and Frozen, you know, that whole season, and Groundhog Day, you know, all this stuff. And I was sitting there on my computer during the Tonys. I'll never forget it. I mentioned it before. It's like, and I had Playbill live, I had you live, and I had Broadway.com live. And then when you would go to commercial, I'd go to Playbill, and they'd go to commercial, I'd go back to you, or I'd go to Broadway.com. You know what I mean? Like I was flipping back and forth. So in doing this, I'm taking still a lot of what I learned from you and from Paul Wontrek and you know and Matt and you know Playbill, like, and being like, you know what, they answered that question. I'm gonna take a spin on this. I'm gonna try to see a different angle on it. You know what I mean? So it's a fun thing to do, and it's what you're doing all the time with people. You're just getting to do it with people that you've always wanted to talk to.
You know, the interesting thing is we used to do a lot of the live stuff, and the only reason why we stopped doing live carpets is you never know if you're going to have internet. Mm-hmm. That was the strangest thing for us.
So strange.
We would have these things all lined up. Catch Richard Ridge tonight at BroadwayWorld at the opening of whatever, going live on the carpet, and then we'd get there and they'd be like, we have no bandwidth, or we can't find, because everyone's sucking it out of the sky. Who knows what happens, you know, or it cuts out or whatever else.
Because I used to watch all those lives. And Matt did his live at 5 on Broadway. I used to watch live at 5, and then I would go and be opening night, and I would watch you, and you remember, right? Like.
Well, the wild thing is you're like, oh my God, we have a 20-minute lull now. And I'm like, but I just I'm at this theater. I've seen 19 shows.
And you're
in this
riffing.
theater. Well, you have to rip, but I'm like, whatever. And then like, oh, we'll go show you some footage from the show or whatever. You know, and I learned this a long, long time ago. And I forget who told me this. It's who, what, where, when, why, and how. So if you don't know someone coming down the red carpet, you can be, oh my God, it's so great to see you. Tell everybody who you are. Yeah. And then they'll be like, hi, I'm so-and-so, you know. I
have to tell you, but that is, it's you know, maybe it's a secret that we're letting out, but that is the trick that I learned from you, because we've only done like a handful of, you know, real red carpet stuff. Yeah. But there will be times where I'm like, yeah, exactly. Can you slate? You know.
No, but the weird thing is because you know a lot of times you know most of the people coming to the carpet, but there's a whole other set of people who I may not know from another world. Right. The politician world, a model. I mean, if you've done Broadway, I know you. Yeah. You know what I mean. You could be in the chorus. I'll know what show you were in.
Right.
But you know, so I'll always say, but if they'll say, oh, talk to so and so. I'm like, this is so great. You know, what's brought you? Tell everybody who you are. And then I say, what's brought you here tonight? You have people in the show, whatever else. But, you know, have a conversation and just listen.
Yeah.
But it's scary.
It can be, because especially if you're live. My gosh, because you're just standing there, kind of like, oh well, you know. Yeah. So in terms of what I think is really interesting about you as well is like, when we talk about the connection and finding that connection, is your retention for all of these people. It's like you can pick out someone and go, oh, they were in. Have you always had that?
Yes.
knack?
I'm really happy with that. I can't tell you anything else about the world, and I'm glad I can't. No, but I just theater stuff or movies and TV, but theater primarily. I can tell them, you did 2 shows here. I saw both of them. Yeah. You know, whatever. I just retain that. Yeah. You know, I'm sure scientists do the same thing, or doctors. You retain what you love. Right. You know, theater is what like I said, falling in love with the theater. I mean, Do you remember the first time you like came to New York and like came to Broadway?
Yes.
And like, what was your first Broadway show?
Our first Broadway show was Spider-Man: Turn Off the Dark.
Okay, so you were there at that theater,
Yeah.
and it's like when you turned the block. So did you enter from 42nd Street or did you enter from 43rd Street?
That I can't
Okay.
remember. See, that I can't remember, but I'll never forget when
Yeah.
we're sitting in the crowd and we're just kids and we're Spider-Man
Yeah.
fans, and he's coming right at you and he's here. That moment, I'll never forget that. You know what I mean? And we're sitting there with our dad, and it was like, and he swung up to the mezzanine, and he's now right here, and I'm going, how in the world did that just happen? You know, like that I'll never forget. You know what I mean? I'll never forget that theater too. That theater.
Getting late to the Fiddler revival.
Or yeah, we came.
What
we
happened?
showed-
You came late?
We showed up late. I know.
Wait,
I
did
know.
you think it was
a parking?
like 8 o'clock? Oh,
It was just traffic. We
Oh,
leave later than
no.
you anticipated, and then
So
we went to
what-
go see Danny Burstein, and we
what
missed
time?
tradition. I know.
so the first number was over.
Yeah, we came. It was one.
Richmond, I think we came right.
Oh my gosh!
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know if we were that late. Oh my goodness! I hope we weren't that late. But you know what it might have been? They might have kept us back in the lobby.
Oh, yeah.
until
By
to
the time
seat
we got
you,
to our seat.
to seat you. Yeah, to seat you.
So
until
that was always like it never happened. So when Death Trap was on Broadway, Preston and I, we were coming from our old apartment on 74th between Riverside and West End, and this cab driver had no idea where he was going. And we're driving to the park. I'm like, no, I have to be at the Music Box Theater. The show's starting in 5 minutes. So all of a sudden we get off at 54th and Broadway, and we have to run down to 45th Street.
Oh,
and
my
Preston,
gosh.
we're young then. We're hopping up. I've never been late to a show. And all of a sudden we sit in the theater. The light just went down. But so I didn't miss that. So Jerusalem came to Broadway with Mark Rylance. And I forgot it's a really long show.
Yeah.
And it was press night, and I'm there all of a sudden, and I come up to the theater, it's like, there's no one here. I said, this is very bizarre. And I was like, they were like, oh, the show started an hour ago. And I was like, what? Actually 90 minutes earlier it started because it's endless. I was like, oh my God. They say the first act's about to end. So just go in the back and then we'll bring you down to your seat. So
my
I've
goodness.
never been late to a
Oh,
show.
my
So I
goodness.
sit down, I sit in my seat on the aisle, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on
Yeah,
in the
right.
show. And the audience is like howling, and they're like, I'm like, oh, what's happening? I see this trailer on stage, Mark Rylance, all these people, and I'm like, the first act curtain comes down, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea. And I stayed for the second act, but I went back again, but I was sweating.
Yeah.
Because I was like, is no one coming tonight? They're like, no, the first act's almost over. So at least
There was some show recently where, oh my gosh, I remember people lining up
Yeah.
at 7, right?
Yeah.
But then another line happening at 8, and it was very recent though. It was in the last year or so where they had messed up the tickets, and some people had tickets where the show started at 7, and then some people had tickets where the show started at 8. So people were so angry about it because they were like, our ticket says, and we just missed the whole first act.
I always tell people, look at your tickets.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, so one of the biggest shows that I saw for my 12th birthday was No No Nanette. It was a big show. Ruby Keeler, Bobby Van, Helen Gallagher. Big, splashy 1925 musical.
In high school.
Oh,
Yeah,
you did-
yeah.
Who did you play?
I was ensemble.
Fab T for Two, and I Want to Be Happy. Oh, you have great taste in your high school.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Donna D'Amelio, baby. We were doing.
That's in the old 1930s.
Your high school rep was like No No Nanette, Sound of Music,
Oh.
Once Upon a Mattress,
Bye Bye Birdie.
and Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh, give a big shout out to your acting teacher and
Yeah,
your
Donna
okay.
D'Amelio.
So I was obsessed with the album. I had to go to this. So our neighbor was taking my mother, myself, and my friend Jeff to the train station.
Okay.
And she was like, I'm so sorry I'm late. So we get in the car, and I'm sweating to death going to the train, which is in our town.
Yeah.
And we pull around the corner to the train. The train is pulling away. And I'm hyperventilating because I'm going to miss No No Nanette.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, she's beeping her horn. The train stops. In Glen Cove, Long Island, Glen Cove Railroad Station, I'm literally like, my head's exploding in the car. She's beeping and beeping and beeping. The train stops. We get out. They open the train for us and put us on and then pulled away. And so it was one, but tell you, that was one of the shows. So we had seats upstairs because, we came from a big family and,
Yeah.
my parents couldn't afford, really expensive seats.
Yeah.
But, going to the theater then, that was the view I had when I was a kid. So I was laser sharp. I was like, don't make any noise during this show. I'm going to be laser sharp on these people.
Yeah.
And then when I moved downstairs to the mezzanine, then the orchestra, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Dayglow.
I know.
So someone
I know.
says if there's some place you could like go back in time and see a show from like 6-row seats, like when you saw Hamilton, because Hamilton played, the Richard Rodgers was the 46th Street Theater where
Yes.
of course that played, and all these great shows. I would love to go back in a time machine and sit in the 6th row on the aisle to see No Nanette.
Oh, yeah.
But when I was 12, I saw the original Follies.
Oh my gosh.
Lily Munster. So I went to see Yvonne DiCarlo. So on Sunday, the New York Times. So we go to church. We get rye bread and we get the paper. And my mother would be making, after church, she'd make dinner. And I'd flip through section 2 and I'd see all these shows. And I saw this ad. I was like, Follies, Alexa Smith, John McMartin, Gene Nelson, Dorothy Collins, and Yvonne DiCarlo. And I was like, oh my God, Stephen Sondheim, West Side Story. He wrote this. I was like, okay. So but Lily Munster's in this. So I was like, I have to get a seat to this. So I literally bought a ticket, sat in the first row of the mezzanine at the Winter Garden Theater, went next door before the show. So yeah, the Wiener World was this German restaurant. There was one by the Palace, had onion soup and all this stuff. I sat at a little table and I had an onion soup and a Coke. Most of the cast of Follies was there, and I recognized them from the cast album. They were all smoking, drinking Manhattans and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, this is so glamorous. So then something burnt in my head. That performance, that Wednesday night of Follies, everybody was on, brilliant. Years later, I got to Fritz Holt, who, of course, Fritz Holt was Hal Prince's assistant on that show. But, of course, he and Barry Brown went on to produce Gypsy with Angela Lansbury, La Cage aux Folles, all these fabulous shows.
Wow.
Fritz's job during Follies was to go to the Wiener World in between matinee and evening and see who was getting drunk, to see if they had to put an understudy on. So I'm remembering sitting there watching all these people smoke and drink Manhattans and martinis or whatever, and Fritz was probably in that room saying, uh-oh, she's going to fall off the
Noted,
stage.
yep.
Noted.
Tomorrow?
Or tonight. She's not going on tonight. But I guess they weren't because everybody was on the night I was there.
Yeah,
so
right,
I think, so I think everybody was allowed to have how many drinks they had.
So funny.
But so it's a full circle moment when I got to know Fritz really well, and Barry Brown, of course, is still alive. What a great friend. But Fritz Holt was someone I idolized, but he was Hal Prince's assistant.
What were you thinking seeing that original Follies? Follies is such a jarring show.
Well, I knew it was an adult show.
Right.
But I knew the album, but I was like, this is spectacular. And it's like looking back at the old, the old women from the Follies and everything else, and then they're getting a divorce, and Alexa Smith and these big production numbers, and then Loveland happens after the cacophony, and then goes back into a whole other time, and then I'm like, wow, this is spectacular.
Unlike anything that had ever hit Broadway at that
if
point.
someone ever said to me, but I was very fortunate to see that, but that was another thing, and I had a really fabulous seat for that. But I was like, that was one of the things, that's why I'm glad I'm older, and that I was glad that I actually bought a ticket to that.
Yeah, of course. I can only imagine. That's like
To have had that, Follies, the original.
Follies. Unbelievable.
So my husband and I have been together for 47 years.
Yes.
Preston and I. So when
you got married last year, is that right?
No, when it was legal. How many?
Sure.
I would say 47 is what we are, but I'm
Yes.
like, but we got married I think 6 years ago. But
Wow.
But when I started Backstage, you only had lunches. So I was like, I may need another job until they put me on the night shifts there.
Yeah.
So I literally walked through New York City with the New York Magazine and walked through the Village like, oh my God, this is a restaurant. Let me go in there and see if they're hiring. That's what I did. And I went in. Trudy Heller's was a fabulous old nightclub. It was on 6th Avenue on the corner of 9th Street. So if you're in the Village, Bigelow's, the old pharmacy, is next door.
Oh,
But now
okay.
it's like, it was a Lenwich now it's a bagel shop.
Yeah.
But it was a very famous nightclub.
Wow.
There. So I walked up these steps and I walked in and I met the day manager and he's like, you know what? Come back at 7:00, meet Preston Ridge. I think he'll hire you. And he did.
Wow.
So that's where I met my husband.
That's so funny.
But I always said that if I hadn't met him then, I believe in fate. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people don't.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm always a believer in fate. And I said, so if I didn't take that road, he came in with his parents to Backstage years later. But because he knew me, but they went there anyway. So I was wondering, would I have met him then, a year later?
Right.
Maybe waiting on him at Backstage.
It's like inevitable.
Do you believe in fate?
Yeah, yeah. I think in certain respects, I think it's one of those things where you're so right. It's like you might have wound up meeting him inevitably.
I don't know.
It's
I
just
always
the
say
time.
that song, "The Road I Didn't Take" from Follies. But would a fork have met somewhere else where he met?
Totally connects to that lyric. Totally connects to Merrily.
The Ben I'll Never Be, who remembers him, right? Is that the
Yeah.
last song?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hope
yeah,
I'm quoting this
yeah.
properly.
And it's like, and that's what Sondheim had been so, that he's used that analogy before. Then he'd also use these situations that had happened for their characters that are like, they had their choice to make their situations. It was fate mixed with intention to some extent.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating show. It's one of my favorite musicals. If you said what was one of my top 2 musicals of all time.
Wow, really?
Hugh Jackman and The Boy from Oz.
See, everyone
Right, so
always talks
we
about
lived there too. We lived at that theater.
that. Wow.
And I remember the press day for that because they did the whole I Go to Rio number in this rehearsal room, and I was like freaking out.
Yeah.
We've gotten to know you over the years, which has been another dream of mine. But
Right.
I would say Boy from Oz, like I said, people say, wasn't the most perfect show? What is? No, I say what is. I mean, you find whatever, but one of the most brilliant performances ever. The whole show was.
Right.
And it was electrifying to sit in that audience.
I'm sure.
Before the show even started.
I'm sure. And what a risk. I mean, he'd come off the heels of X-Men, and
totally.
everyone was advising him against doing it.
Totally.
And he, it was one of the greatest things I think he could have done for his
Never
career.
missed a performance.
Yeah, right? And he won the
Never.
Tony for that.
Yep, and he never missed a performance.
Wow.
Broadway debut, never missed a performance. Daniel Radcliffe, another one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I loved, I think he's one of the most incredible souls too. Daniel is such an incredible person, besides being one of the most talented.
Yeah.
Came here doing Equus, never missed a performance.
Wow.
How to Succeed in Business, never missed a performance. Was never nominated for anything during those early shows. I thought to myself, how can you not give him a Theatre World Award? I mean, he's like making his Broadway debut in Equus. It's one of the most greatest things ever.
And he's a superstar.
Yeah.
And also, too, I think everyone forgets about this one because now he's won the Tony for Merrily and whatnot. But he was fantastic in The Lifespan of a Fact. I think people, Bobby Cannavale to Cherry Jones. I mean, that was a great show too. He was
Love
great
that
in
show.
that too. Yeah, I love that play too. I just think it's a great play. So yeah, that was also Daniel. I've met him a handful of times, and he's so sweet.
If someone said, what's one of the biggest highlights of watching someone win a Tony Award? That was a big one for me because he's worked so hard, but he loves his craft. Yeah. And he could just sit in California in a house.
Sure.
Live off of Harry Potter money, but no, he comes and does stuff at the public theater. He does, and he has such a good heart, and he stands up for really, really fabulous things.
Yeah, I think so too.
And he's super talented.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about because I'm sure this has happened to you, is going into a show, interviewing people from the show, but you've never seen it and you know very little about it. What is the research that you're doing beforehand? And then also, how are you approaching an interview where you don't know a whole lot about the project?
So most of the time, I've been lucky that I usually do things before I go to the rehearsal room.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So the nice thing is I let the person I'm interviewing sort of tell me what's made this so special for them.
Right.
Who are they playing?
Right.
Right. So if they give us a musical number, that was really wonderful. Where does that musical number fit in the show? But I sort of let them tell the story because I don't know the story yet.
Right.
All I've read is, or if I've been lucky enough to read a play or something else.
Right.
But most of the time, that's when I interview someone. I was like, why did you get involved in this? Why did you want to say yes to this?
That it informs you on the back
and
end.
it also lets people know, oh my gosh, this person, this actor has such a passion for this material.
Right.
Like, oh my God, it's a Sondheim musical. Oh my gosh, it's a Kander and Ebb musical.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Have you been put in a position? I've heard Jimmy Fallon say this on a podcast separately, where he's like, there are times where guests will come to him and be like, I have to tell you, I'm really nervous about this. I'm not sure that this is going to be the greatest thing. I'm not even sure that I love it, but I did it because of this with my friend or something, or whatever. So I just need your help to kind of create the buzz with this. Have you ever been put in a situation like that? Yeah. And it's been one of those things where you're, I would imagine it's one of those things where you're kind of having to navigate the truth a little bit, right? Because you're navigating whether or not, or even a piece that you've seen that maybe it's not been your favorite, but you're kind of having to navigate you're building the buzz. That's the most important part, right?
Well, like I said, that's why I never reviewed.
Right.
Because I always think, it may not be the best tasted piece of cake.
Sure.
Because I always say a show is like putting a cake together. You're putting all these, or a stew or something. You're putting all these pieces in.
Right.
Then you hang the shingle outside. The marquee goes out. You hope you have a fabulous product, and you hope people come.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, I've known all these people connected to these shows.
Right.
So it may not be the best thing they're in, but they believe in this show.
Right.
And they're doing it for a reason.
Right. Right.
And I always try to find the positive in everything, but it's hard sometimes, if you know a show is a stinker or something.
Or if there's just, some bad press or things like that, where you're kind of having to navigate around the...
I just try to give them good press. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just try to find, I'll look at a project and say, wow, they have one of the best directors working on this show. Or, or this is the best star.
Right, right.
Right. And that's when I'll ask a star, I'll be like, if I know something may not be the greatest, I'm like, why did you want to be a part of this? And they'll be like, I wanted to work with this person.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. How much have you seen throughout because you mentioned you've been in the industry for so long, how much have you seen Broadway shift, especially, there's, it feels like we're always living in, like, we talked about this with Matt too, is like, we're always living in like this kind of like hot seat of like, theater's dying kind of energy, which is not true, but also it's one of those things where, the New York Times came out with this article about there's less musicals out now and things like that. How much have you seen Broadway change for the better, and also the things that you wish we could adopt from the past and the way the system's worked?
I thought about this because I've been going to Broadway since I was 10 years old. And, when these articles come back, I look at all my old like paperwork and newspaper ads, and I look at the theater director, and it's all the same. There's, maybe 7 hits, and then there's a few shows that are trying to break even, and then there are shows that are going to flop.
Right.
That's always been.
Right.
It's been through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I love flop musicals. You do too. They're musicals that never made it, but it's always evolving.
Right.
I think ticket prices are really expensive.
Sure.
I mean, but if I was a young kid starting out now, I would find a way. How can I get a ticket? I know they're expensive, but I have to go to this.
Right.
People find a way.
Yeah.
And like I said, even when I was going to get $20 in 1973 was still a lot of money.
Right. Right.
To do the train, like I said, it was only $4.20. It was $4.50 round trip. $8.50 for a theater ticket.
Wow.
$2 for the Gyro King, and $2 for a souvenir book. So I could do it for $20. But still, I worked hard for that $20.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm saying, and I sat upstairs.
Right.
And I know, like I said, upstairs was cheaper. I know now it's almost the same. It's not that cheap.
Yeah.
But I said, there's a way. I know some of these non-for-profits you can usher.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're sitting in a premium seat that someone spent $800 for.
Yeah.
They put you in, and I would do that. Or I would find a way.
For me, I'll tell you, like I'll never forget. I'll never forget going to see Network with Bryan Cranston, and this is December 28th. I mean, it's like in the thick of it. New York is getting ready for Times Square at New Year's Eve, and it's impossible to get a ticket to that show. Bryan Cranston's leading it, Tony Goldwyn. I mean, Tatiana Maslany. Like it was a huge show, and I was like going to the box office repeatedly. Do you guys have any standing room? I just want standing room. Just give me the $40 standing room, and they didn't have it. And then I get a call that was like, hey, we just got a cancellation. We got some standing room ticket. Oh my gosh. So I turned I'm on my way to the train heading home, and I turn right around, I go in, and this is like 2 hours before curtain. They're like, we have this standing room ticket. I grab the standing room ticket to Network, and I'm standing there, and this woman sitting in the back row, she turns around to me, she goes, how much did you pay for your ticket? And I was like, this ticket is a $40 standing room ticket. And she was like, I paid $400. And I remember being like, $400. I was like, oh my gosh, but you find a way. I really wanted to see Bryan Cranston in that show, or Glenn Ross. Like that was a typical ticket to get this season, and we just had to like make it work and just go to the box office repeatedly and kind of like.
I always say if you're nice when you go to the box office. So when Bette Midler was doing Hello Dolly on Broadway. We wanted to go all the time.
Yeah.
Literally. If there was like a night off.
Of course.
Preston would be like, what do you want to do? I'm like, let's go back and see Bette. And I was like, well, it's going to break the bank. But I'm like, let's just, He's like, I know. So we take Mark William over with us. My husband handles an incredible actor and entertainer. And, he looks like an angel. So, there was always someone nasty in front of them on the line. My husband and I only want to go on this date. They have to be these seats. What do you mean you don't have them? And they'd be whining at the box office. And they'd be, I'm sorry, man, we don't have these seats. Right. Well, all right, let me go check with my husband. And then Preston would walk up with Mark, and they'd be like, oh, he's here just for a short amount of time. I have third row or second row for you, and I'm going to give them to you for $500 as opposed to $900.
Right.
Said, do you want to sit in the second row, dead center? You're so nice. So we'd go all the time. I always say, be nice.
Yeah.
I always say niceness goes a long way.
It does.
Or whatever. So it's like,
And also, I always suggest go to the box office. There's so many options to get tickets now, but I still think going to the box office, being there in person,
well, you don't have service charges too, I tell people.
Yep.
I said, try to download a coupon if you can. Go to the box office. Otherwise, your ticket's probably cheaper than the service charges are.
It's
sometimes.
true. It's true. And you're dealing with a person there. You know,
And you're dealing with a person.
You're saying, hey, you know, this is what I'm trying to make work, and they'll work with you. And I don't know. There's something about it that's a part of the
Way
experience.
before your time, though, tickets were color coded. They were small, and they used to flip them. They pull them out of the thing. This Matt, I have this. Let me see what I have. I have a single in the third row. They flipped the tickets. They would this. Oh, there was fabulous time.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's really special.
But no, sometimes people are really nice there.
Yeah.
But I always say, like I say, find a way to go.
Right.
Find a way. If you love the passion of the theater, you will find a way to go. Of
course.
If you have a grandmother, say, Grandma, please, I don't need a holiday gift or a birthday gift. Please, you buy me a theater ticket.
Yeah.
I used to do it all the time. Whatever.
Yeah, right.
You know, just whatever.
We would say that in the children's theater, where it's like some kids that went to LaGuardia, or I'm like, you're right next to Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
Go see Flip Collins. Go see.
Yes.
You went to go see like what, the third or fourth Broadway show, Amelie.
Amelie, yeah, we saw Amelie.
It was just like
We
it's
were-
happening.
we were on a roll.
Now look,
Preview, second preview.
Amelie wasn't a hit, but look who was in that show.
I know.
That you can say you were there.
Yeah,
That's why
right.
I always say I had a wonderful time at that show.
Yeah.
But like I said, look who was in that show.
Yeah.
Philippa Sue and all this great cast and who
Yeah.
wrote it and directed it and everything else.
Right.
You could be like, yeah.
And suddenly too, for me at least, like I would take note, and I would like, and it's, oh my gosh, God only knows how much it's helped with this podcast. It's like I've been like Richard Rich, you know, or Ken Davenport. Like I was obsessed with Groundhog Day, and I knew that he had produced it, so I knew him just from producing Groundhog Day, you know, and like we had him on the show, and it was like something that like I do my own research too, of course, but there's also some personal connection.
Of course,
to it, you know. That's a couple years ago, you made your Broadway debut.
Yes. Oh, you're good. Fabulous. Yes. Boy.
In the Prom. So can you talk to me about that experience? You went through a put-in rehearsal and everything. Was that for opening night?
You are so good. Okay, so I'm very proud of this. I'm really proud of this. No, this was so when right before Tony time.
Yeah.
When all the out-of-town voters come in.
Yes.
Some shows do certain special things.
Yes.
And the Prom that time decided to take a journalist. Remember the show opens at the opening night of
And they start
Eleanor
with-
the Musical.
Yes, yes.
So the Tuesday, Wednesday matinee, Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they took 6 of the big journalists that covered Broadway,
Right.
and offered us that walk-on, which is a fabulous open. You open the show, I have it. I'll send it to you. I have it.
I
It was
know, I
video-
watched it. It was fantastic.
I love this. So so everybody decided what they wanted. So wanted Tuesday night, so wanted Friday, whatever else. I got the Wednesday matinee.
Oh,
Which I
nice.
did. My husband's like, why are you doing the Wednesday matinee? I said, I don't care. I love Wednesday matinees. Why aren't you doing a Thursday night? I'm like, I don't care. I'm doing it. My performance of the Prom, standing room only for the Prom.
Wow.
And I have to tell you that the Polk office, who I adore,
Yeah.
closed their office for the matinee. They all came
Oh.
to the opening of the show
That's
to watch
nice.
me make my debut.
Oh, that's nice.
So I had the coolest time. So anyway, I'm a Muppet. You can tell that I'm a Muppet. And I thought with the Prom, it's all a bunch of Muppets.
Right.
So I love the show to begin with.
Yeah, it's a great
So I was like, oh my gosh. So I had the script anyway. I had the script at home, and then all my friends, I knew everybody in that show. Beth Level and Brooks and Angie and everybody.
They're
in
all
that
giving
show.
you tips and
No,
advice.
so anyway, so they said you're going to come for a Tuesday night put-in or whatever. And I knew Casey Hutchins, who was Casey Nicolau's assistant or assistant director or associate. She's just got a really big title. But anyway, she put everybody in.
Yes.
I've known her forever. So everybody's there doing their thing. She says, now Richard Rich, show them how it's done. No, but it was like, because when the show starts, the overture's going, and then you hear dit 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 dit, and the curtain goes up. Good evening, I'm Richard Rich.
He opened
you
the show.
open the show, and so anyway, the put-in went great. And they sent us a little video, which is just to watch. And I said to myself, oh, I can, I'm a Muppet. I want to do this like the real way.
Yeah.
Because all my other cohorts, I'm so nervous.
I was going to ask, were you nervous?
No, I wasn't, because I'll tell you, I'm always have some nerves going on because I'm very hyper.
Yeah.
But I try to channel it, and I was like, you know what? You know this. You've got this.
Yeah.
So Tuesday night was really great. And then I did another quick put-in the Wednesday afternoon right before.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, it was the most magical day because all these people were in the house. The people who wrote it were there. I mean, everybody was there for the matinee, but seriously. And there was no place to put anybody because there were no seats. The performance was sold out. No, I'm just saying
They
this.
should have put you above the billing.
This performance
Yeah,
of
right.
the Prom sold out.
Yeah, right.
No, but anyway, so that afternoon, and Brooks is like, oh, just Angie said, let's do this bit and let's do this. And Beth, they were so great. But right before I'm on stage with this crazy cast of the Prom, they are like laughing and giggling and kicking their legs over their head. I'm like, focus. I'm like, I have so
Get it
no,
together,
but they're all
people.
doing, and I'm like, I have to open this show. That Richard Rich are fabulous. They're gonna be fabulous, and they're all doing this. But as soon as that curtain goes up, they just doing their thing. But I'm watching because I could see the pink light like underneath, so I was
Yes.
waiting for that. And then I did my whole thing, and I almost got a standing ovation, but I came. No, I'm not touting my own horn, but it was one of the most magical times I had. And we had done a piece beforehand and afterwards, and they said, "Go outside and sign autographs."
At the stage door?
At the stage, I signed autographs that day at the
my
stage door or
goodness.
whatever.
How special.
So I watched the whole second act, and these people sitting next to me like, "Oh my God, you were so wonderful. They let you watch the rest of the show too." But it was one of those magical things. Would you dream of this? And I was
Yeah.
asked to do that. And that Wednesday matinee will live in my mind as one of those magical times.
Yeah.
But Beth took me under her wing. Brooks did, and Angie, and
nice.
said, "Let's just have the time of our life." Because
Yeah.
Beth turns to me, she goes, like when I went to grab her, she goes, "You're doing a fabulous job. You are the best." So we would just like shoot the breeze. But we had a bunch of Muppets up there.
That's
So I-
awesome.
I had the
That's
time of my
great.
life.
That's great. I want to ask you about
Yeah.
this upcoming season. What are you most looking forward to? What are the things that you are? We just got the announcement today for the Lost Boys cast, which is pretty exciting. Great cast. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, Casey Levy and Paul Alexander Nolan and Ali, whose last name I'm blanking on his last name, from Tommy. And he was in the company national tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a stellar cast. Really cool cast. But what are you most looking forward to this season?
Everything.
Yeah.
No, it's like I want to celebrate. We're at a very interesting time right now.
Yeah.
And I just think there's something for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing about Broadway, and that's what makes Broadway really, really special.
Right.
There is something for families. There is
Right.
something for intellectuals. There
Yeah.
are musicals. There are plays.
Young, old,
There are
older,
comedies.
yeah.
Young, old. I mean, there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's an exciting season. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's like, Queen of Versailles starts previews tonight.
Yes,
you mentioned
sirree.
Rob Lake. I mean, I love magic, so I'm looking forward to and Muppets that we were just talking
Also,
about.
I
too.
I just talked to Rob Lake today and Kermit.
You talked to Kermit.
And I was like, it was a big deal, but so Harry Blackstone Jr. Was at the Majestic Theater back in, I think, the late 70s at Preston. I had told Rob today, I was like, oh my God. And I knew Doug Henning from the Magic Show. So he was just, we're going to go out and just talk about, because he learned all of his stuff from Doug Henning.
Okay.
And he's a theater kid and a theater nerd and all
that's
that
nice.
stuff too. But it's really great. But that's for the holidays. I mean, there's
Right.
a fabulous holiday show.
Right.
And I love illusions. And today they literally chopped the woman in half right in front of us where your brother is sitting.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, we could not see anything. And he did this card trick. I was like, no. And you think you're figuring it out? I'm like, no. There's no way this could happen right in front of you.
Right.
But the Lost Boys, Patrick Wilson is one of the major producers of that show.
Yes.
And I love everybody connected to that show. I love that movie.
No, I've never even seen the movie.
Yeah. Oh, the movie's really great.
And it's the same. It's pretty much the same team from
Yeah,
Queen
I'm
of
sure.
Versailles too.
Like I said, Queen of Versailles starts tonight. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, tonight a big Broadway musical is kicking off their previews. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big
and
deal.
it's the first Stephen Schwartz musical
yeah.
since Wicked in 20
Totally.
years. So that's also a big
And
deal.
then Wicked Part 2 is coming out.
Yes, that's
The film-
right.
And Kiss of a Spider Woman, which
Yeah,
I just
so
saw.
I was going to say, you just saw it.
Oh, yeah. And I went in kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Only because Cheetah, my favorite, and
course.
everything else. And I've seen that show like 33 times on Broadway.
Yeah.
Including her closing. So
Yeah.
I know that show inside out. It's a spectacular film.
Yeah.
And the changes that Bill Condon made with the adaptation is really brilliant.
Oh, I'm excited
But the
to see
entire cast is superb. The three of them are so magical.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
exciting.
prison scenes, it gets ready to explode, and then it goes into a movie.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
it's I
can't
wish
wait
them
to see
nothing but the best of luck. And again, Kander and Ebb, Terrence McNally. But it's a great season.
Yeah, it is.
Merrily Roll Along movie.
The Merrily movie comes out in
Merrily
December.
roll along. I mean, this is great.
Yeah. So lots to look forward to.
Yeah, totally.
You mentioned this a little bit, and I want to ask you a little bit about the red carpets and being on the red carpets, the flash, the fastness of it. Some red carpets are much smaller than others, and then some you mentioned are like Cher, where there's Entertainment Weekly and the Hollywood Reporter and all these other. Talk to me about handling interviews on the red carpet where you have this really short blip of time. What is your goal with it to within that time?
Okay, so if I'm doing a really, really big carpet where I know that, I cover everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's a very small Broadway community that is there for everything.
Right.
And then some of these megastars come, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, there's 40 film crews.
Right.
Where do these people come from?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I've always put that into perspective. As
Yep.
Chita told me, I stay in my lane.
Yeah.
And I will always wait for my Broadway peeps to come down the carpet.
Yes.
If I get a major film star or whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah.
But that's never been my thing.
Yeah.
I appreciate that and would love to know that they know someone in the show or whatever. But
Yep.
the point is, I would rather wait for my theater peeps because a lot of the bigger crews don't want them.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just whatever. But, you know, and I've had a lot of big stars. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not putting big stars down at all.
One of my favorite ones that you've had that I chatted with you about
Yeah.
briefly was Steve Martin and Marty Short. My gosh.
The opening of Shucked, wasn't it?
Something like that. Yeah, Shocked or Pictures from Home or something
think
like that.
that-
Yeah.
yeah.
I adore the
Well, they
two.
go because Marty just went on a rant. I mean, just goes on a comedy rant.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Steve is like his straight man or whatever else, or they
Yes.
switch out or whatever. But it's
Right.
like, I just had them going for whatever. I'm like, just stay rolling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
you never know. And then I love sometimes when you get a third or a fourth star that know the other ones. Then you get 4 of these people together.
Right.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like gold.
How are we all here at the same time? Yeah.
No, but you know, it's just whatever. But I always say, I get what I get.
Right.
You know, you still want, but like I said, I've known a lot of these people. So a lot of people will just come down. I was at an opening for something. I was at something, and a star said, "Oh, I'm not going to do all this stuff. I'm just going to go to some of my favorites." You know, I'm starting with Rishi. And then if I have to go back somewhere else, I'll go. But you know, I want to talk to someone I know.
That's nice.
You know, and
Yeah.
I when someone does that, I think that's just really great. It's like, this is what the theater community does.
Yeah.
But I just take it into perspective. I'm like, you know, this is a megawatt whatever.
Yeah.
But I've known Bobby Cannavale forever.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
Bobby when he was in small 25, seat shows, and Neil
Yeah.
I've known forever, and James too.
Right.
So it's like they have a great opening night
Of course,
too. But
yeah.
I mean,
With the red carpets, you see a lot of, like you said, a lot of younger people there now. There's a lot of like TikTok short form content stuff. So it's interesting to see you kind of like
Old
like
school.
Well, no, not even old school, but it's just like in terms of staying in your
Yeah.
lane. What I appreciate about what you're doing is you're still you're managing the hustle and bustle of that red carpet, which is really exciting. Also, sometimes you guys are doing this in the cold outside.
Oh, we'll discuss this. So you should ask me. Say, what was the coldest carpet you've ever done?
What was the coldest carpet you've ever done?
I'm so glad you asked me. There were 2 of them. Rocky was one of the coldest.
Oh, really?
Rocky was, I think, 14 below zero.
Oh, my
It was
gosh.
outside the Winter Garden, and the publicists were literally holding the step and repeat because it was so cold and windy. I thought it was going to blow away.
Oh, my gosh.
I could not lean the microphone into like a star without bending my whole body.
Oh.
Because we were frozen.
Oh, my gosh.
Whoopi Goldberg. I love Whoopi Goldberg. Honey, I watch everything she does. I love Whoopi. Great. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. One of the best performances ever, Whoopi. She said, of course I'm going to talk to you. You're like a frozen snowman out here. But Sly Stallone and his daughters get out of his car. So it is literally 14 below zero. This big, huge limousine pulls up.
Right.
His daughters have practically nothing on.
Oh,
they
my
have those
gosh.
like California
Yes.
designer dresses
Yes.
that are made of tissue.
Yes. Yes.
How they didn't just freeze to death on the street. I was like, looking gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but I mean,
course.
wearing tissue paper,
Oh,
short little
my
mini
goodness.
dresses. And I was like, with high heels, like, what? I'm like,
That's crazy.
14 below zero.
Did you get to talk to Sly Stallone on the carpet?
No, he just did pictures of whatever. They were freezing.
Yeah, of
You know,
course,
but the diehard, like Whoopi and the rest of them, who all know us for
yeah.
being in the trenches for these things.
Yeah.
And the other one was K-pop.
K-pop.
So K-pop was at Circle in the Square.
Yeah.
And they did it on the side, like
Yes.
out of the tunnel,
Always
but on
on
the
the-
side.
yes.
And I'm like, you have the whole downstairs. We're here 2 hours beforehand. There's only 7 crews here. Couldn't you have put it in the lower lobby?
Yeah.
All those girls, again, came out, tissue paper, mini dresses on and whatever else. And I was like,
God bless him.
Welcome to Broadway. You couldn't, and they're like, and their hair's blowing. And like, but those are the 2 coldest ones. But you know what?
That's
But
funny.
Rocky, so I couldn't even do my intro. We had to go to a coffee shop, went to like a Starbucks or whatever.
Right.
And I said to my camera person, I said, let's just thaw out. Let's just get hot chocolate. And because I couldn't think. You
Right.
could not, I mean, my brain, I said, I
Right.
think my brain had like, what do you call winter freeze? What do you call when you get like
Oh,
freezer burn?
Oh,
I
sure.
said, I think I have brain freezer burn.
Yeah, yeah.
So it took us like a half hour. They said, let's just run back out again.
Yeah.
I'll do one take.
yeah.
If not,
yeah.
just cut it.
And and that's what I was gonna say about the red carpet. I just remember, I'm like, oh, it just hit me. In terms of the publicists, because that's a big part of it, especially with the bigger stars. Yeah. What's great about you is that you're going, and we've noticed it too, is going directly to the source. And we love publicists, but it's just going to directly to the source. A lot of the time makes it a lot more personal.
Well, the interesting thing is, I've also known a lot of these publicists forever. And they're like, I was with them when they first got some of these clients or whatever else. And if a lot of these publicists had clients, I'd be like, every season I try to have my favorites who I want to push for awards.
Sure.
I thrive on that.
Yeah.
I have a really good eye for that because I met Kristen Chenoweth in the rehearsal room of Steel Pier. When everybody wanted to talk to Susan Stroman and Gregory Harrison, was this little teeny tiny blonde sitting down, and I was like, oh my gosh, who are you? She goes, I'm Kristen Chenoweth. I was like, come do an interview. And she told me that the original audition breakdown for her was like 6'1" with legs.
Wow.
And she said, why am I going in? But I wanted to go in, and they cast her. So Jim Newman played her dance partner, who's tall, and she's like a little munchkin. I mean that in the best way.
Yes, of course.
But the original breakdown for her role was like 6'1" with legs.
How funny.
And Jonathan Groff I met in the rehearsal room for In My Life.
Oh, sure.
Which was the man who wrote "You Light Up My Life."
Yes,
it was a very interesting show. It was half opera, half whatever. It was a crazy show.
Yes.
He was the dance captain.
Jonathan Groff.
Sitting there, I said, "Who are you?" "I'm Jonathan Groff. I'm a dance captain." I was like, "Come do an interview."
Aw, that's great.
And I had all the Rent people. I think I was the first people to interview all the Rent people.
Wow.
I was like their first interview. They had no idea.
Wow.
And the same thing with Spring Awakening. So I've known, and I've known Leah Michelle since she was in Ragtime and Les Mis and everything else. So it's
like you say about sound bites, where it's like it seems to be, and if this interview is proven up, that it seems to be out of complete and utter love of Broadway history.
Yes.
What will be Broadway history.
Right.
To where you're gonna get these nuggets, because for every flop, there's gonna be a Rent.
You never know. You never really know.
That's legendary, and then you ended up talking to the dance captain, Jonathan Groff. It's genuinely super special.
But see, that's why I say about Broadway. Broadway's always going to be here. Broadway is never going to die. They have said this for 5 billion years, but if you look back at any theater directory, there are shows that are big hits in town, and there are shows that aren't, and shows that fold. It's always that way.
Right.
But it just become a larger number now to produce a show.
Yes. Right.
And that's that. But Hal Prince said, I asked him, what was your favorite? I did one of the last sit-downs with Hal. I did a 2-hour sit-down with him for the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. Talk about one of these, if you talk about your top two, and I've known Hal forever. When I used to wait on him at Backstage or Curtain Up, how are you, Richard? What's happening with your career? Would always ask before he wanted a drink or to order dinner. But he said Follies was his favorite show, and it was one of his biggest flops. And he said, I put all the money I was making from Fiddler into just to run Follies because I did not want that show to close.
Wow.
I did not want Follies to close.
Wow.
And like I said, Follies has become like everybody's go-to back then.
Yeah.
And it was Clive Barnes who didn't get what that show was.
Interesting.
But it's just, but people learn, and I've asked major stars too. They learn more from their flop shows.
Of course.
Some of the families are bigger.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The revivals. That's Merrily. It's like the revival.
Who could have ever thought what happened with Merrily would happen?
And I went to Merrily a lot because we got tickets at Backstage. Nobody wanted to go, so they'd be like, all the box office men.
Oh, the original
like,
Merrily.
Do you have a night off? Do you want to go?
Wow.
Here's 2 more tickets to Merrily. I saw everybody in Merrily. And I saw Carrie too the same way.
Wow.
I just keep going.
Iconic labels that we have.
Well, hold on to that one.
Yeah, we have the original Merrily and we have the revival Merrily now, which is pretty special.
And that's like we didn't get that at the flea market, but it's one of those things where you're opening an old school playbill and you're seeing Stephen Sondheim's bio.
Yeah.
And there's no Into the Woods.
Yeah.
It's like before.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a story about Chita. You talk about people who are like heart people.
Yeah.
And people who are so human.
Yeah.
So when she was in the rink, of course, it was her and Liza Minnelli. That was a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
And the course, when Liza
Still
came
a big
on.
deal. I can't believe that was a
I
thing.
loved that show.
Yeah.
And I thought that show was going to be a hit because that was the same year Terms of Endearment opened.
Okay.
With Shirley MacLaine and Deborah Winger. I said, oh my God, a mother-daughter conflict movie, big hit.
Right.
I said, this is the Broadway version of that. I said, I love The Rink. I think it's one of the best scores that John and Freddie wrote. And Terrence.
And now they're doing a concert version with
Well, no, I went. So it was at CSC. They did it
Yes.
a few weeks ago.
Okay, yes.
And the highlight of my night was spending afterwards afterwards was hanging out with John Kander and Albert, his husband.
Oh, yeah.
And we went out afterwards, whatever. And John said, I think 3 of my favorite all-time shows were the ones that we wrote with Terrence McNally, because they were all heart shows.
Yeah.
You know? It was The Rink, it was Kiss of a Spider Woman, and The Visit.
Right.
Not that he doesn't love all of them.
Right.
But that was a big deal at that time. And, Liza was going through her addiction problem.
Sure.
And that's when she would leave the show, and she went to Betty Ford and everything else. But I remember the first night she wasn't going to appear. And there were a lot of people returning their tickets.
Of course.
At the box office.
Right.
And Chita called all of the cast, all the boys, the Jason Alexanders, the Scott Ellises, the Scott Holmes, everybody in that show. She called to her dressing room for a meeting. And she said, you all know what Liza's out of the show tonight. We have 2 options. We can cancel the show, I can go home, and they'll refund everything. But you guys won't get paid. And she goes, I don't want that. They'll dock you for this show if it doesn't happen. I want to do this show for the 500 or 600 people that are there, have come to see this and want to see The Rink.
Right.
So they said, if you want to go on, we're going on. And Jason Alexander told me this story, and Scott Ellis told me this story too. Now, when Liza was not coming in, Chita could have gotten her car, just gone home, and they would have canceled the show and told the kids to go home.
Right.
But she said, I don't want you to be docked.
Right.
But that's a gypsy, and that's a heart person who learned, and that's why she always said she was very happy that she started in the chorus and worked her way up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when she was doing Can Can, she was called into Gwen Verdon's dressing room, and she goes, at that time, there was only 2 reasons why you were called into a star's dressing room, like you're in trouble or you're going to be fired. And Gwen called her in and said, Chita, I know that you want to go in as for my understudy. She goes, don't. You're Chita Rivera. Be Chita. Don't try to be, don't be an understudy. You're way beyond that. And that was Gwen telling her that.
Right. Right.
And it's what a story to tell. Back in the 50s, that a star takes you in their journey and says, don't go up for that. Just stay in this show till you get your next show. And a few shows after that was a little show called West Side Story. But what I'm saying is, don't don't do what you do. You're too good for this at this moment.
Right. Yeah.
So I always listened to she was always that way. She always looked out for her boys in her act. Chita always looked out for the people in the show with her. Right. And I talked to Stokes Mitchell when Stokes Mitchell did Kiss of a Spider Woman with her. He was a replacement after Anthony Crivello left, after he won his Tony. And he said, what I learned from Chita, besides so many things, was how you captain a show. Her dressing room door was always open for anybody to go in her room at any given time, before the show, during the show, or after the show, if there was ever.
And I've always heard that she was the first person in the theater stretching.
And I always ask stars. I know stars that say, oh no, I like to go on, if my call is 7:30, I get there at 7:31, and I slap my wig on and go on. I couldn't do that.
Right.
But there are stars, but Chita, there's a lot of people who like to go early.
Yeah.
And like to prep, like get into your zone in the dressing room, calm down, have a tea, I'm at the Martin Beck now, I'm in my dressing room, I'm getting ready to go on as Aurora, or I'm going to be, I'm going to be Velma in Chicago,
And I saw her at one of her 54 Below shows that she did.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And this was a couple years before she passed, but you would never know what age she was. Nope. She had this zest. She was brilliant. She was brilliant. So, and I met her afterward too, and she was just the kindest, sweetest person.
But that was her.
Yeah.
That was her. So she's always someone who lives on. Who's my first. She'll always be my first and be my favorite.
Yeah. Okay, we want to put you in the hot seat a little bit. We're gonna ask you a couple of questions. And these are really like Broadway. What's the word? Like Broadway question. You have to know Broadway to know these.
Okay, perfect.
So essentially what I'm going to ask you to do is create some Mount Rushmore musical theater, Mount Rushmore leading ladies, Mount Rushmore leading men. So I'm going to ask you to give us 5 musicals. What? No, I'm not doing a ranking. No. 5 Broadway musicals that are like your Mount Rushmore musicals.
Okay, one would.
I know Mount Rushmore is 4, but we're doing 5.
We're gonna do 5 because it's Broadway. Broadway's been around longer than has Broadway been around longer than Mount Rushmore?
Honestly, maybe. Probably.
We're just saying, of course it is. We have no idea, because we're theater nerds and theater geeks. So if anybody's out there saying, no, Mount Rushmore, I didn't do well. Yes, for us it is. Broadway will always be the Mount Rushmore. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just, let's see. Follies.
Yeah.
The Act. Chicago, the original Chicago with Cheetah and Gwen. Liza in the Act. Follies with them. Ann Miller and Mickey Rooney in Sugar Babies. Hugh Jackman and The Boy from Oz.
Wow, look at that. 5 big. Okay,
That's
great.
a really good Mount Rushmore. Wouldn't you go and buy a ticket to go to see the Broadway Mount Rushmore?
That's a great Mount Rushmore. Now give me 5 Mount Rushmore leading ladies.
All right,
of
leading
all time.
ladies. Okay, my leading. Oh, this is hard. This is really tough.
Yeah.
5. Okay. Can't the Mount Rushmore have like an annex, like the back end, like, and when you turn the corner. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 5 leading ladies, right?
Yes.
What? Chita Rivera, Ann Miller, Bernadette Peters, Chita, Liza, Bernadette Peters.
Oh, you said Cheetah and Bernadette. You want to add Liza?
So I try to do this on purpose, so you can't count how many I have. Wait, so I have Chita Rivera,
You said Ann Miller.
Liza,
Bernadette.
Liza Minnelli. That's
And you
4.
got one more.
Oh my God, this is terrible. Well, let me see. Leading late. That'd be Gwen Verdon.
Gwen Verdon.
That'd be Gwen Verdon. All right. That's a
There you
good
go.
5.
That's a good 5.
Listen, I love all of you leading ladies out there, but they've only given me 5. And when the next time I come on in a year when Mount Rushmore has a whole back end to Mount Rushmore.
The second Mount Rushmore.
The second Mount Rushmore.
Hill Rushmore. Okay, give me a Mount Rushmore leading men now. 5 leading men Mount Rushmore.
Oh, leading men. Okay. Musicals? Or it has to no, because then you'd have to have,
I guess
you'd have
so,
to have
'cause
a
you're-
play Mount
Yes,
Rushmore.
right.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
it's a whole
kidding.
whole different thing.
I will do musicals. All right, my 5 leading men. Okay, so it'd be Hugh Jackman, Bobby Van from No No Nanette, leading men. This is tough. This is a tough one. Let me see. So I have 2 only. Right?
You got 3 more.
to go. Oh my God, I would say Jerry Orbach from like Promises in Chicago and 42nd Street. Leading men. Oh, this is hard.
Jerry Orbach is great.
Oh, Dick Van Dyke. Thank you. Well, I need to put him in there. He's my 4th. I only have 1 more to go.
One more.
Can there be a tie?
Yeah,
Okay,
do it.
Let me see. Wait, a tie. So leading men. Oh, there's a lot of them on this. Let me just see. So, well, since I met him so early on, I'd have to say Jonathan Groff.
Yeah.
I have the Jonathan Groff in there. So I'm coming out of the vintage line, Jonathan Groff, but now I have to add Daniel Radcliffe because he's gone to musicals now. And they were in the same show.
Yeah.
So that's sort of
That's
that
a
could
great
be like,
tie.
All right,
That's
that
a
was
great tie.
And there's so many more. Trust me. Out
Oh,
there.
yeah. And now I need for you to give me one revival that you need back on Broadway. There's one show that you're like, they have to bring it back. What show is that?
All right. So, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go old school. So we've had some of my favorites back already. We've had those back. I would have to say, I don't know who I cast in it, but I would have to say, good question. Good question. I'm looking at my posters.
I know for a lot of people now, like we just like the Dreamgirls announcement a couple weeks ago was
No, see,
huge.
that's
that
come
was
back.
a big one.
That's come back. I would have to say No No Nanette.
Wow, no,
I'm going vintage. The new 1925, 1971 musical is now going to come back in 2026.
No, I love it. I
would love to have seen you do that.
Yeah, right.
Since he's here. But no, Nanette.
Now, because you're a dream guest of ours,
Yes.
and you're also happen to interview yourself, does it feel weird being interviewed?
No, I love it. I love it. This is wild. It feels
I
so-
have to
feels
ask
so
you.
comfortable.
I have to ask you. For you, you're gonna manifest the dream guest for us as well. But with that being said, I want you to think about someone that you wished you could speak to, someone that you haven't spoken to that you're like, you could give us 2 options. One would be someone that you've not spoken to that you would like to speak to.
That's
and then
on Broadway?
it could be anyone. And if we get the that's living, and if we get the chance, then we'll invite you back, and then we'll do a 3-person podcast. So yeah, give me someone someone that you've not spoken to that you're like, I've always wanted to speak to this person to manifest for us.
Oh, this is tough. You don't have to push pause, but you may have air through. You may have to do 2 edits.
Some thought. Yeah.
In and out. There's too much air in between Richard Rich trying to answer his last
You'll have
question.
to listen to this part on 1.75 speed.
Totally like the Barbra Streisand book. Right? Did you speed her up?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Oh, you speed her up. It's like, hello, I'm Barbara. I did Funny Girl. Otherwise, it was like, I'm Barbra Streisand. I did Funny Girl.
Yeah, it's too slow.
Yeah, it's too slow. Like, Oh, okay. Let's say I would love to. I've never spoken to her.
To Barbra Streisand?
To Barbara. Oh, that's a biggie.
Oh,
Okay.
wow. Okay, great. So if we get Barbra Streisand on the show,
totally.
we'll invite you back, and then we'll do a dual interview with Barbra Streisand, and then give me someone that you have spoken to that you want me to have on here. That you're like, oh, you have to speak to this person.
Oh, Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe. I love it. I'll take it. I mean,
that's a big list, but he's a real sweetie.
Yeah.
You'd love him.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much. We have to. So we have to end here because we start the podcast by asking you who was your I want to be like you as a kid, and we want to end the podcast by asking you who is your I want to be like you now. And it doesn't have to be a celebrity. It could be someone in your life. It could be whoever you'd like.
You mean who I'd like to be like?
Yeah, now.
That if I could
who's your I want to be like you now?
And it can be a celebrity.
Oh yeah, it could be whoever you'd like.
Let's see. Well, I'm just going to say who I'm very much like. I would say my mom. I'm going to go personal here. I'm going to say my mom.
That's lovely. Why your mom?
I just think I have a lot of her traits.
Yeah.
And I think I have a lot of her, like, the glass is half full, and I find the positive and stuff. So I think it'd be my mom.
That's lovely. I love that. Thank you so much. Our first dream guest.
Oh my God. I have had a blast here today with you two.
Thank you so much.
And I will come back whenever.
Oh, we would love to have you back whenever. So
after Barbara comes on, I'm coming back.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Woo! I want to be like Richard Ridge.
I want to be like him.
I Want to Be Like You with Elbi Cespedes is produced by Elbi and Christian Cespedes. Special thanks to Angelina Cespedes, Vincenzo Salvatore Cakes, Matt Rodin, and of course, Richard Ridge.